they're just lying. They commissioned the study. They got the results back from the study they commissioned. They commissioned the study because they wanted it to say that they were correct in banning care through their legislation. Turns out the study that they commissioned didn't say that. It said what a variety of other reputable associations who study this have said. So they don't like it, and so it's a bad study, even though they're the ones who wanted it and put it into action. They don't like it because it upsets them, it hurts their feelings, and they can't wiggle their way out of that in any other way. They've left themselves no exit plans other than lying to you blatantly, to your face. You know me, when it comes to the kind of content that I do, I usually try to focus on really controversial issues, things that have a lot of, back and forth between the different people and their perspectives on it, a lot of different discourse that can happen. So I figured I'd move on to something of the same, especially with the channel returning to being more or less full steam ahead. Miracle cat who survived Bryce Canyon fall, adopted by helicopter pilot who rescued her. Isn't that nice? Look at that. I'm not sure how to feel about this cat. I think it might be a communist. We're actually going to look at this one. It was just funny because it was one of the most viewed articles for the Salt Lake Tribune, apparently. I found it by following Jillian Brandstetter on Blue Sky, which you can follow me at, by the way. You could just go to bsky.app/profile/conure.cc. You should go follow her. Republicans in Utah commissioned an investigation into gender-affirming care for trans youth after banning it in 2023. They're now rejecting the findings of that investigation, which showed access to care reduced and improve positive mental health and psychosocial functioning outcomes. Imagine my shark, the thing that most people with like a modicum of understanding of how the transgenders, exist already knew this. I'm pretty sure this isn't the first time that a right-wing study has disproven a variety of the lies and smears of their own party and the ones that they may even say. Like, it is just a continuing thread when it comes to the right-wing and conservatism, Republicans, just not really being comfortable with the reality within which they live and wanting to try to force something that's a little bit more comfortable for them, their own hug box and echo chamber, on everybody else in society through force, so that they can, feel less bad and also reap a variety of benefits for themselves, and particularly white people and wealthy people. It's a long-fought war that they've had on factual information and logical understandings of a variety of things. It goes back a long time. Most conservative and regressive movements are going to have to engage in a variety of fantastical thinking, theory crafting that's baseless and outright smears, libel, etc., to try to force their agenda on people because they don't actually have anything interesting that they want to do to help the average person that's going to be voting for them. So they got to trick people by using a variety of lies about minority groups often to make you vote for them so that they can give more to the wealthy and make sure that you, your family, your grandma work until they die for less money in worse working conditions. A lot of good stuff. But Utah lawmakers' own study found gender-affirming care benefits trans youth. Will they lift the treatment ban? This came out on May 22nd, 2025. I'm going to guess no, that they're not gonna, but let's see what the article states. Utah's ban on gender-affirming care for transgender youth was meant to be a moratorium, giving lawmakers the chance to reevaluate the policy once experts reviewed research on the impacts of treatment. This week, nearly 2.5 years after the law took effect, lawmakers received the findings of that study. Utah healthcare experts concluded in a more than 1,000-page report, quote, overall, there were positive mental health and psychosocial functioning outcomes as a result of gender-affirming care. But some Republican legislators are already dismissing those findings because, they're woke and DEI. Quote, young kids and teenagers should not be making life-altering medical decisions based on weak evidence, even though the evidence isn't weak. A variety of medical associations that literally study this shit for their job have come to the same conclusions as it pertains to the standards of care for gender-affirming care for trans youth, adults, etc., etc. Like, it's pretty strong evidence. They just don't like it, so they're going to consider it to be weak and ignore a variety of things that they could see with their own eyes and hear people say with their own ears about, the actual reality we live in. They're just going to ignore that because they don't care. They don't want trans people to exist. It's very easy to be, oh, what about the children? Even though their party is the party of cutting a variety of social programs that help children, being against child poverty being drastically reduced under the Brandon administration and the bill that made that possible. A variety of things like that, being, statistically disproportionately involved in a variety of legal cases that involve the harm of children. The Republican Party, conservatives, they kind of have like a monopoly on that, but they're going to try to deflect away from that, all that statistical evidence, because it's inconvenient for them. They want to keep being able to get away with stuff like that and using a smokescreen like, well, we actually care about the kids because look at these transgenders trying to make the kids trans, is a fun little way for them to theory craft about things that aren't actually happening while, throwing smoke in the eyes of people that are decent and just want the right thing to be done by a variety of people who don't happen to be them. Representative Katie Hall, Republican from South Ogden, the House sponsor of the 2023 ban, and Representative Bridger Bollender, Republican from Grantsville, who chairs the legislature's Health and Human Services Interim Committee, said in a joint statement to the Salt Lake Tribune, quote, "Utah was right to lead on this issue," they continued, "and the public agrees. Polls show clear majority support both statewide and nationally. Simply put, the science isn't there, the risks are real, and the public is with us. We intend to keep the moratorium in place." They're just lying. They commissioned the study. They got the results back from the study they commissioned. They commissioned the study because they wanted it to say that they were correct in banning care through their legislation. Turns out the study that they commissioned didn't say that. It said what a variety of other reputable associations who study this have said. So they don't like it, and so it's a bad study, even though they're the ones who wanted it and put it into action. They don't like it because it upsets them, it hurts their feelings, and they can't wiggle their way out of that in any other way. They've left themselves no exit plans other than lying to you blatantly, to your face. While the reviewer prepared for lawmakers acknowledged, quote, an increase in some specific types of benign brain tumors, it found in studies that included thousands of transgender individuals that, quote, increased risk of mortality was consistently due to increase in suicide, non-natural causes, and HIV/AIDS. Patients that were seen at the gender clinic before the age of 18 had a lower risk of suicide compared to those referred as an adult. And you might be wondering, why is that? Well, if you go through a society where one of the major holders of power in the country, the Republican Party, is consistently using your existence, the minority group that you so happen to be a part of, that you did not choose to be a part of, as one of their major, scapegoats to try to fool people and scare people into voting for them so they can give more money to the wealthy while making your life worse, and a variety of other social things that go along with that to try to keep people in the closet, to try to keep people from being their open and happy and actualized selves, they're gonna feel bad. Their life's not going to be very good, especially if they're young and their parents, who they rely on for housing or food, aren't fans of the fact that trans people exist and wouldn't want their child to be that because they consider their child to be, a possession of theirs and not their own individual human being, but their own thoughts, feelings, opinions, and understandings about their own identity. Republicans, conservatives, big fans of considering children to be property, by the way. The long and storied history of that. That's why a lot of red states are okay with child marriages and are okay with corporal punishment, both of which have never been proven to have any kind of benefit for the children and have only been abusive. Utah Senate President Stuart Adams told the Tribune that, quote, the future and safety of kids are paramount, which is why we're going to lie about evidence that you could all see with your own eyes and instead insert our own reality that isn't real that's going to harm more children, because conservatives, Republicans have always been fans of that. Quote, that is why Utah enacted a law to safeguard the long-term health and well-being of minors while providing time to carefully examine the evolving medical landscape surrounding novel and irreversible procedures for minors. We will review the report as part of our ongoing commitment to the well-being of Utah children. But, if it turns out that any of the information is uncomfortable to us and actually refutes a variety of talking points that we've kind of staked our entire political existence on, well, then we're just going to ignore it and pretend it didn't happen, tell you to your face that you're a liar for telling me that you've seen it, that you read it, the commissioned study that we wanted that is now in existence because of us, the Republicans. Well, you're a liar for saying you read that shit and that it said the opposite of what we've been saying for a long-ass time, okay? As of Wednesday afternoon, Governor Spencer Cox, his real name, not a porn name, was mum on the report, which conflicts with a review issued by the Trump administration earlier this month. In a committee meeting overseen by Bollender earlier Wednesday, the only mention of the report and subsequent recommendations came at the beginning when a staffer said dozens of reports legally required to be submitted to the body had been posted online. There was no discussion of the document's contents. Minority leaders Representative Angela Romero and Senator Luz Escamilla said their respective caucuses has not been notified of the report's release. It's almost like they want to hide the report so that you don't actually see the real information and so that you are more likely to buy their bullshit. Huh. But no, politicians, they never lie. They never lie in order to further their own ends. They only if they're Democrats do they do that. They don't do that if they're Republicans. They said lawmakers should take more time to review the report's contents before definitively deciding the future of the policy, and that the public should be included in those discussions. A news member of Utah's congressional delegation, Representative Mike Kennedy, sponsored the 2023 bill banning gender-affirming care for transgender youth. Kennedy, a physician and attorney, insisted then that he was motivated by concern for children's health, telling his colleagues, quote, "Compassion and love are at the base of all of this, and that lawmakers needed more evidence before they allowed minors to continue accessing gender-affirming treatments. Even though all of the evidence that is currently readily available to them has molded the standards of care as it pertains to gender-affirming care for trans youth and adults, and Republicans seem to, by and large, be completely against that, even though it is completely antithetical to their own beliefs. Health officials declined to take a position. Thanks for fighting for us. Utah's gender-affirming care ban was debated, passed, signed by the governor, and took effect within days of the 2023 legislative session's commencement. Not a single person is better off. People in Utah, if you were already working a job that wasn't paying you enough, you're still working a job that's not paying you enough. If you were already not getting health care through the state like a variety of other countries are able to do, you're still not getting that health care. If you were already in a position where you have to work multiple jobs just to keep food on the plate for your children, you're still doing that because the trans stuff doesn't affect you at all, brother. It literally, unless you are insane and you get some kind of schadenfreude about other people being harmed as a result of the people you vote for, you're not getting anything from this. You're not benefiting at all. But you're allowing it to motivate you to vote for people that are, by and large, just making it so that your life is worse. That you have to work longer hours for less money in worse working conditions, and you have to see your family, your elderly family members, work until they die because the Republican Party wants to slash Social Security, wants to raise the retirement age so that Meemaw has to work even later into her golden years, being more likely to harm a variety of aspects of her health, physically, mentally, and making the best, what should be the best years of her life surrounded by loved ones, even more stressful. Good job. You've done it again. But at least those transgenders are owned on the timeline. The law bars gender transition-related surgeries for people under 18 years old, even though those are not happening. The incredibly infinitesimally small amount of them that do are often not even involving trans people, but are rather breast reduction surgeries and other such things for not trans people. And also prohibits minors from accessing hormone therapy, including puberty blockers, in the state, even though all available studies have shown that puberty blockers are overwhelmingly not likely to cause any kind of negative outcome for those that use them. You just go on puberty blockers until you figured out if you are trans or not, through a variety of consultations with medical and mental health professionals, yourself and your family. If it turns out you are trans, you end up going on hormones that give you the puberty around the time as is necessary to, be the more actualized form of the gender identity that you are, or you get off the puberty blockers and go through perhaps a little bit of a later puberty, which is not abnormal. People go through late puberties all the time, of the hormone that your body would produce by default, given its factory settings. That's it, man. It's pretty simple. Young people who had already been diagnosed with gender dysphoria before January 2023 were allowed to continue previously prescribed hormone treatments. Well, that's nice at least. Unexpected silver lining. Doctors who provide care and violate the ban could lose their licenses and face criminal charges under law. That seem familiar? They always go after the doctors. When it comes to the fight for reproductive freedom for women and anybody with the capacity for pregnancy, they will always go after the doctors first. Remember when Trump had an interview with that blonde news anchor, I think from Fox News, who I think has passed away, and he was asked if the mothers getting abortions should be penalized criminally. Trump actually slipped up accidentally and said yes, they should. He ended up having to walk that back and then eventually went back to the standard conservative and Republican talking point, the one that hides their true intention of wanting to punish women and anybody with the capacity for pregnancy for getting an abortion because they want to be able to control them, ended up attacking the doctors instead. It's why they always focus on the doctors, because it's easier to villainize doctors who are just following regular standards of care for the subject at hand and the needs of the patient, which is literally their job, their oath, because, it's less obscene as for the conservative movement to attack the doctors rather than the people wanting the abortions because it's the thing that they want, be it threat to the life of the mother or whatever. If the legislature does decide to end the ban, however, DHHS recommended it also create a, quote, hormonal transgender treatment board that would provide care guidelines, limit providers delivering care to, quote, demonstrated experts, and require that treatment be overseen by an interdisciplinary team of physicians and mental health professionals, and implement an, quote, explicit informed consent process. A variety of these things, by the way, that happen to already exist in a variety of other places, and are also under attack by Republicans and conservatives. Like, they're willing to, I guess, in this way, capitulate, but they're still going to try as hard as they can to make it as difficult as possible for people to get this care, be it youth or otherwise, as we're seeing in a variety of other states, as well as the most recent tax bill that the Republicans have put forward that is trying to restrict Medicaid, helping the poor trans people of the country get access to their life-saving treatment, their medically necessary treatment. The federal report departed from guidelines widely used by healthcare providers and the opinions of most medical associations, including the American Medical Association and the American Academy of Pediatrics, in asserting that there are significant risks to gender transition. It instead encouraged psychotherapy for transgender youth, including methods considered by some mental health providers to be conversion therapy, a practice banned in Utah. They would rather psychotherapy because it allows for a method to make sure that trans people don't exist. If you can utilize psychotherapy, a form of abuse, in this case, conversion therapy, not all of psychotherapy, but conversion therapy, which has just been understood to just be abuse, especially child abuse if used against children. If you can do that instead of just allowing trans people to exist happy, healthy, and fulfilled lives like normal, everyday people, you can at least do harm to a population that you find disagreeable or disgusting. Very good for you, I guess. Hormonal treatments for gender transition have not been approved by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration to treat gender dysphoria, but Utah's DHHS noted in its legislative report, quote, administering the medication off-label has become the standard of care. Off-label use refers to the practice of administering drugs that are approved to be prescribed in the U.S., but to treat conditions for which the medication is not expressly approved. The way that you fix this, it's not actually as scary as it sounds. The way that you fix this is by actually following the variety of other medical institutions like the American Medical Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and the rest of the laundry list who understand the information and studies at hand and allow these drugs to be used on label for the purposes of gender affirming care. As always, if you want anything to be safer when it comes to medication, you make sure that the doctors prescribing it are as educated as possible, that there's a larger amount of doctors available to take on the amount of patients that might be available. If there are too few doctors, then the doctors that are available might be, overbooked and therefore more likely to make more quote-unquote spurious decisions when it comes to prescribing these things. If you want that to happen less, fund the medical system more outside of private insurance and private healthcare. Allow for more doctors to be able to get work and fulfill the needs of the patients. Allow for these drugs to be approved for the uses that they are overwhelmingly used in the standards of care for. Allow for even more people to be able to access mental health care that helps them go through a variety of these gender identity related things about themselves and helps them make the most informed decision possible. It's so easy to make trans care safe and readily available for everyone, but the Republicans do not want that. They want less of it because they want less trans people to exist for a variety of reasons that I've mentioned in the past. It upsets their patriarchal hierarchy. It upsets their control over people through gendered expectations. It restricts their ability to control a variety of groups of people, even cisgender, heterosexual people, and even men. It gets in the way of all of that. And you can't have that. If you're a Republican, you can't go along with the readily available information. You have to substitute your own delusions instead, because it's the only way you can be seen as having a modicum of respectability. The article continues, Utah's transgender kids face elevated risks. This week's release of the report follows University of Utah Health's decision to shutter its popular clinic for LGBTQ+ youth, a move a spokesperson attributed to a reduction in patients following the 2023 passage of Utah's gender-affirming care ban, working as intended for the Republican Party. They want less trans people to exist. Improved mental health outcomes are often the focus of offering hormone treatments to transgender young people. Research included in the Drug Regimen Review Center's review for Utah officials indicated transgender individuals who receive care at a gender clinic before the age of 18 are less likely to commit suicide, a risk transgender people of all demographics are disproportionately prone to. It's almost like, once again, if you formulate a world where one of the major political planks of one of the most powerful political parties in the world, the Republican Party, because it's situated in one of the most powerful countries in the world, the United States of America, people are not going to want to live in that kind of condition, especially if a variety of other social conditioning, lies, and smears about the transgender community are allowed to fester and be pushed. People are not going to enjoy living, and therefore might be more likely to want to stop, and therefore might try to do it with their own hand. And if that's something that the policies and the legislature, the members of the legislature that you support and vote for, if that's something that they're okay with, if that's the logical extension of what they're actually advocating for and putting forward, the increased likelihood of trans people taking their own life, I think you're wrong. I think you're incorrect. And unfortunately for you, no matter how many people cease to be transgender through ceasing to exist or staying in the closet, your life is not going to get any better. You're still going to be getting paid the same, which is more than likely not enough to live. You're still going to have to work multiple jobs if you already are because of that. That's not going to change. You're still more than likely going to continue to suffer in a variety of ways that you already are because this doesn't help anyone. It only hurts. That's obviously the point for a lot of Republicans, but there are also a lot of dumbasses that vote for them. You might be one of them. I'm a dumbass too. I just don't vote for the harm of other people. So I have a little bit of a moral, high horse here, I'll admit, but that's because I've done my due diligence and understood a variety of the information that people smarter than me have come to the conclusion on when it comes to gender-affirming care and the standards of care related to it. Like, you could too. You could join, in this case, the right side of history, and be normal and not care what trans people are doing because it doesn't affect you. It really doesn't. And the only time it might is that you might find a trans person attractive, and at that point, good for you, man. You found a person attractive. If it turns out that you don't like that they're trans and you're trying to be in a romantic or sexual engagement with them, oh well, find someone else. There's plenty of fish out there, brother. You can figure it out. As part of Utah's Student Health and Risk Prevention Survey in 2023, approximately a quarter of transgender students polled reported attempting suicide at some point during the previous year, and 61% said they had seriously considered it compared to 18% of their peers. The Trump administration pulled such mental health data related to transgender youth offline earlier this year before being ordered by a federal judge to restore it. Reason being, they don't want to be seen as the party that is moving young people in such a negative mental health direction that it increases their likelihood of contemplating or going through with taking their own life. Because they know it's bad. Because they know it looks bad to normal people. But they don't care. A lot of them actually like it. A lot of the lunatics online are actually happy when they find out about it. Not saying all of them. A lot of, decent, misinformed, and uneducated Republicans out there that think that the Republican Party actually wants to lower their taxes, as the worker instead of the taxes of the mega wealthy, and are unfortunately misled in that way. There are some lunatics out there that do like this and want to see the percentage go up because they want less people that are trans to exist. Very obvious, very simple, very straightforward. Utah's DHHS also took transgender-specific reports down around the same time. The agency said the action was due to privacy concerns and told the Tribune it, quote, had no ill intent or political motivation. I bet, man. Makes a lot of sense to me. An article by researchers at the Trevor Project, an LGBTQ+ youth suicide prevention nonprofit, published in the journal Nature Human Behavior last year, concluded that among transgender youth, suicide attempts have ticked up in states that have passed laws restricting transgender people's ability to live openly. I'm shocked. You're telling me this for the first time. Get a fucking life, man. There's no way to be spending your time. The people of Utah have actual problems, all right? Mormonism, kind of big in that state. Wouldn't want that to be me. I wouldn't let that shit happen to me. A variety of other issues. Your legislators wasting their time bullying children is not a good use of your vote. It's not a good use of your taxpayer dollars that fund their salaries. You gotta ask better of these people. They serve you. They should be scared of you because you're the people that put them there. You're the people that vote for them. And if they don't make your life better, why the hell are they there? They're doing their job in a terrible way. You gotta get somebody better for the job. If I was, flipping burgers and more than half the burgers I put out were absolutely disgusting, undercooked, had a variety of insects and other such things in them, I'd be fired, man. I wouldn't have a job anymore. But for some reason, if you're somebody who got into the political system and the electoral system, you're allowed to do the worst job possible and actively make people's lives worse and keep getting voted for and keep your job. It doesn't make any sense. You gotta ask better of these people. That's mostly toward the conservatives and right-wingers that might be watching this. If you've made it this far, I applaud your ability to keep cool under such immense pressure of somebody simply understanding reality. For some other people that aren't you, that have a bit of a difficulty with controlling their feelings, they might have tapped out. They might have gotten really mad, maybe left an angry comment in the comments, and pieced out of here. For those of you that are still around, I appreciate you, even if we don't agree. All right, even if you think I shouldn't exist as a trans person, all's fair in love and war, brother. If I get my way, and we are able to say raise the minimum wage, increase the amount of unions in the country, if we're able to make it so that everybody gets their medical care, their mental health care, free at the point of service, subsidized by taxpayer dollars, that the majority of which would come from the mega wealthy people with more money than God, we can, take a little bit of their money. They can still be relatively wealthy. We can take a little bit of that money and make sure Mima doesn't die of cancer when it could be, treated. All right? I feel like that's something we could do. And even if you disagree with me, if I get my way, it'll help you. You literally cannot lose, okay? You cannot lose. If I get my way, you get health care, okay? It's never been tried in the United States of America, okay? Let's see if we can make it work. It's the best nation on the planet, I've been told. I think we can do it. We got a lot of money. We could spread it better. We can give more of it to, people who need it. We can make it so that Mima doesn't have to work until she's lost all her hair and her teeth are falling out. She can, get on a retirement plan earlier than 90 years old, I think. Republican legislators might disagree. I don't think your Mima deserves that. Anyway, appreciate you all for sticking around. Best of luck out there to anybody this might affect. Sorry that we live in a world where there's a variety of people on one side of the political fence that are not big fans of the reality, and because it upsets them so, they lash out at people that are literally just trying to live their lives and don't affect them at all. It is what it is. It's the unfortunate reality of the life we live. It's going to continue, even if we get through a lot of the worst of it that this administration is trying to put forward. A lot of people won't make it as well. It will get better. It's just a matter of putting in the effort to do so. If you can volunteer, if you can start forming little community networks of people that are like-minded like you and help each other, help everyone, you can make the world a marginally less bad place, especially in your immediate area. It's a good idea. Join your local DSA. Pressure your elected representatives to do better by you, because you're the one who put them there. You're the one who gave them the job. All right? You got to give them a performance review at some point. Otherwise, you're not doing yours. And, yeah. Take care.